Hi, I'm T.H. Culhane, co-founder and director of Solar Cities. I'm with Kathy Puffer, our Chief Communications Officer. Solar Cities is the organization that teaches people around the world how to make their own biodigesters and use that biodigester slurry for growing food and making soil again. And Kathy, we're at your house today in wonderful Tilson, New York, and you've got a new thing going on that is going to rock the world as we move into our refugee camp ready Solar Cities trainings. What you got happening for us?
Well, first off, before you visit, I had an inkling that you might be stopping by. So about 2 weeks ago, I started a whole bunch of seedlings in rock wool. And this is completely inert. It's made from volcanic ash. This is kind of like the standard way that you start plants when you're growing hydroponically. So I have been super excited about bioponics, growing food with bioslurries. So it's still considered technically organic, so it's a step above regular hydroponics, which uses like the extracted earth minerals, because we're using recycled garbage and manure to make our compost tea that we're going to grow food in these buckets right here.
So rather than doing traditional hydroponics, and the major barrier there always was the expense for getting the fertilizer, you've got two biodigesters in your basement that we built with the Mercy College students a few years ago that have been working through the polar vortex winters. You've got the Borg over there, a biodigester with a passive solar panel for passive solar heating. You've got little Jill out there and roofing membrane made salchicha digester. And you're taking all that slurry that comes out and you're going to grow. And we've been advocating tower gardens for the longest. We still are working, selling tower gardens, helping people doing trainings with tower gardens. But now you're going to buckets. Why buckets?
Well, even though the tower garden is a great way to grow and is our fundraising tool for Solar Cities, I like the buckets because buckets can be found all over the planet. I mean, let's face it, it's not hard to find a bucket. It's also not hard to get a basket and some simple clay pellets or porous type of gravel and put that into a bucket and just get started.
So this is the basic setup.
Yeah, this whole basic setup possibly cost me like less than $25. Very inexpensive.
You could use a used bucket, any kind of basket, a laundry basket, whatever. The basket is just so that the roots can penetrate. Is that the idea?
Yeah, just so that it holds
and
the
water can
roots
come into
together
it.
And the
fertilizer.
the gravel together, so that it sits in the bucket. And the name deep water comes from that the plant is sitting in water. So it is completely, immersed in the water, and the purpose of the rocks is just to merely provide the structure for the roots to have a space to grow and to allow the microbial community to start to flourish right in here.
Right, lots of surface area. And the depth of it is good so that evaporation losses don't just dry you out before you get started, right? That would be the problem with the nutrient thin film technique for hydroponics, or if the water stops running, if the tower garden or any vertical aeroponics system, if the water stops being pumped, then you're
out of luck.
Out of luck.
Yeah, and the thing I like growing with tomatoes and with beans is they have a tenacious root system, and the root system goes deep and fills the entire basket. So even if your water gets down to here, you still have roots way down in here, and those roots are going to grow down into the water. So, even though you're running low, your margin of error is much better, and you have much better chances of being successful.
So deeper is better, but of course deeper also means less oxygen getting to the roots, and your answer to that, I guess, is that what this is doing in there?
It's a bubbler.
It's a bubbler.
Yeah, if you look in here, you'll see the bubbler that I have going. So I have the the pump up on the porch, and it's really important to have your pump higher than your bubbler, because if the pump ever turns off, this whole thing basically functions as a bell siphon. It'll empty your whole bucket into the box where you're keeping your bubbler, and
if the bubbler's on the ground below.
Yeah, so
sure.
I keep mine high. So mine is up on the porch, so it's a higher elevation than what my buckets are, which is very important when you're doing deep water.
So let me just grab something here. This is not the same bubbler, but technically, if I had a bubbler, I could mount the bubbler somewhere right up on top, right? I could do so as long as it's above.
Right.
Your aquarium bubbler, then you're fine. And this is heavy duty.
You just don't want it coming in contact with the water because it is electricity. Right. So I like to keep all of my equipment in some type of container or box or something just to keep it separate from the water.
So, can I just, if we were out in the field in a developing country,
Right.
might we be able to do this?
Exactly, because it's higher than the level of the water, so you are in good shape doing that. Absolutely.
Okay, so that'd be a simple setup. 2 buckets, one for the air pump, and then the this pipe would be going down into
Now,
the bucket
drill
like
a
that.
hole in the
Drill a
side
hole
of
in
the
the side of the
bucket.
bucket.
Because otherwise, if you didn't have the hole, the basket would pinch off the air pump and it wouldn't get the air in. Because the plants need the water, the food, the oxygen, and the sunlight. So
So you want to fill this all the way up.
right now I have it halfway filled because I thought we could add the bioslurry to it, and then we could
right.
top it off.
Okay, so let's take a look at the bioslurry for a second.
Sure. So this is the bioslurry that we actually did a draw from our digesters. It's like nice and dark. It's a little bit lighter than I see with some of our other digesters because ours is constantly running gray water out of the kitchen sink. So I'm going to do a 50-50 for today with our bucket. So this is a 5-gallon bucket, and I'm going to make it like about at the halfway mark.
Let me give a smell here. This one here,
it's a little bit lighter than this one.
this one has the anaerobic smell. There's a sulfur smell here, slightly acrid. This one does not. What's the difference?
Well, this one here is Anna, and this one is Elsa. They're still 2 separate digesters, and I have the feeling that one gets fed more than the other.
Has this been sitting out in air longer?
No, they're both about the same. They've been sitting in the overflow bucket.
One thing I've noticed in my own system in the apartment in New York is that if you run the air through them, the smell goes away within a couple of hours, and then there's absolutely no odor at all. It's not a bad smell. I mean, it's not objectionable. You can't smell it from here. You have to literally stick your nose down to here to be able to detect the odor. But once the air has been bubbling through it, there's no odor. So if you were concerned indoors, is there going to be an odor? Run some air through it for a couple of hours outside if you like, and then bring it on in and pour it in like this, and there will be no odor at all coming right out of the biodigester.
I'll fill it up like this, and I'm just going to make sure that, okay. So I look here, and I can see the bubbles coming up here. So I know that I have enough in here. I'm going to add a little bit more.
And I imagine that just as stones in a paint can biogas stove act as flame spreaders, these are acting as bubble spreaders too, right? So the stones are helping the bubbles to get all around. There's not one area where the bubbles, because I noticed that the air stone doesn't have to be planted right in the center. It can be off to the side because the stones will help spread the bubbles.
Okay, so another important concept with deep water is that you don't want a bucket that's opaque so that the sunlight can penetrate in because it would cause an algae bloom.
You want it opaque. You don't want it to be transparent.
You don't want it, exactly, don't want it to be transparent. So what I have is this special plastic where it's white on one side to help keep it cool and then dark on the other side and it's thick.
Where'd you get that plastic?
So the sunlight's not going to go through. I got it from my local hydroponics store.
Okay.
Great. So I covered it with that, and I'm going to go ahead and put a plant in. I got this really awesome Armenian or asparagus bush bean plant that I got from the Experimental Farm Hub.
Sure.
You know our friends that we met at Omega? And I thought you'd like to do the first planting for me.
Yeah, I'd love to. So what I love about this kind of gardening is there's no dirt. So you don't get dirty. I guess you could wear your Sunday best and do this. And I just make a little pit for it and wedge it in there and boom, planting done.
Yeah, I got a couple more here. So as you can see, the roots are starting to come through.
Lovely.
And this plant does need food, so we're giving it food right now to have this bioslurry. And I want to make sure that the roots are 100% covered, so I'm just going to add a little bit of extra hydrogen here. And that's really it. We're done. That's a single planting.
That's gardening.
Simple.
It can be done in cities, it can be done on roofs, it can be done in apartments. As long as you have a good source of light, biodigester provides all the nutrients, and you're using the same water over and over and just making up for evaporation losses. And it's wastewater, isn't it? I mean, what's in your biodigester, the water coming in is what you use to wash your dishes.
Yeah.
So it's your soapy water. So your gray water that you're using to add to the digester Then it's coming out as liquid compost tea, and then that's going in, and the air stone is bubbling away, giving the plants the oxygen they need. All the nutrients are in there, including the nitrogen, and no soil, no mess, and it's really robust if the electricity fails.
The only other thing is you want to make sure you test your slurry too, because ideally you want your ammonia level to be a 0. I've historically come out as a 4, and it's just a good thing to kind of keep up on. And what we're going to be experimenting with is what the ammonia levels are today, and then we're going to be tracking to see how it changes over time. So we could do ammonia and nitrite, because nitrite you don't want either.
And you get these from aquariums.
Yeah, aquarium source. My nitrites have typically been 0, so that's very good.
Can you explain to us why this is necessary for plants? Most people think, okay, I get it, you don't want to kill the fish with ammonia or nitrite. Why for plants?
Well, for plants, really, it's the nitrate that you want, not the nitrite, because the nitrate is really what feeds the plant. So the whole thing of doing the biofilter is to convert the nitrites into nitrates. So it's something that's more useful to the plant. So you're doing a test to see if it's bad for the plants, but if it's extra good for the plants. You're trying to do this the test that you would do to make sure the water was healthy for fish. You're trying to see, actually, do we have the best kind of fertilizer for plants? Right, and I'm trying to see if this works as a natural biofilter, so I don't have to do anything ahead of time.
Right.
Why not?
It makes sense, because in aquarium tanks, what they do is they have aquarium air stones, and they got a lot of surface area stones or stuff with a lot of porosity, and where the bacteria can grow, and that's what does the conversion of the ammonia and the nitrate. Brilliant.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming over and visiting our home today. We're going to be we've been using our bioslurry on our beautiful gardens that you see all around us over here. And, we're continuing to use it in our vertical aeroponics, and now we're doing deep water.
No, this is really exciting, because we were in Israel at the Araba Institute for the Environment, and they're just beginning to do their experiments with deep water hydroponics, or what's the other way that you describe it? Deep water, it's not aquaponics. It's
deep water culture.
Deep water culture, but they were afraid to use the bioslurry, and so everybody's looking to you, Kathy and Ed Puffer, looking to your house for confidence that you can use it straight out of your home digester, and then it grows with plants. And we're doing a 50-50 mix, I understand?
Yes.
50% water to what comes out of the digester, so this is very exciting. Just anecdotally, since this part is relatively new for you, what have you learned in the past that gives you confidence that you can just go straight bioslurry?
Well, I grew a bean plant last year, and it turned out to be this good, so it was huge.
So now we're just corroborating the results from last year and going
I want to do a
larger scale.
larger variety of bean plants. I'm doing tomatoes, and so I really want to have a really nice display of how awesome it really is.
And this will be totally awesome for refugee camps, for urban slums, for places where people are living without much space and very congested and very difficult situations, where it would be difficult to bring solid fertilizer up, either because of the expense or because they're up many flights of stairs, and that would be a hassle. Here, there's really they're just using what's already found in the apartment once they have their biodigester.
Yeah, another strategy is if it's really hot and you don't have something to cover the bucket, you want to protect your deep water culture, you bury it into the ground.
Okay, that's a great tip as well. A lot of great things to learn here from Homestead Economics in Tilson with Kathy and Ed Puffer. Thanks. Please do try this at home.
All right.